Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary for the day of 515 for the 23rd of July. Let's start off with the major news at Bakhmut Front. At the Bakhmut Front, the Ukrainian forces have entered KLISHCHIIVKA. So they have captured some part of KLISHCHIIVKA itself. And this is the southern part of KLISHCHIIVKA. They also captured certain part in the western part of KLISHCHIIVKA over here. So this actually is the first official confirmation. This is from the Russian sources from Ryba. They reported that the Ukrainian forces have entered KLISHCHIIVKA, and this is the first time we have a confirmation of the reports that the Ukrainian forces have entered KLISHCHIIVKA. And the Ukrainian forces continue to be pushing over this region. They are fighting from the north, from the west, and from the south. And the Russian forces are shelling the high ground just off KLISHCHIIVKA to prevent the Ukrainian forces from entrenching themselves over on this high ground area. They continue to shell it, while the Ukrainians are now in firefights with the Russians inside KLISHCHIIVKA itself. So this is the major breakthrough, and this is the Russian line starting to crack, I would say, because the Russian forces have been being pushed back by the Ukrainians over weeks, over the past few weeks, and the Russians just keep falling back, and it looks like they might not be able to hold KLISHCHIIVKA. And this, on top of this, we have information from pro-Russian sources as well that the Ukrainian forces have reached the outskirts of Avdiivka, and the Ukrainian forces have made huge progress around this area here, and they are now just off Avdiivka. Information coming from Deep State UA, where they simply mentioned the fighting at the western part of Avdiivka, but Ryba reported that they are now close to Avdiivka. And this is this border is actually based on the pro-Russian source mapping. And the information in the north is the Russian Defense Ministry only mentioned there's fighting at KLISHCHIIVKA. They did not acknowledge any Ukrainian success. Deep State UA also only mentioned fighting in the north and the western part of KLISHCHIIVKA. But I think Deep State UA also did not want to get their followers too excited, because pro-Ukrainian people tends to very excited about any Ukrainian progress. Of course, the pro-Russian side also the same, but it's just that the Deep State UA don't really like their followers to be overly exuberant, or too excited, which is why they are probably trying to hold back this information. Do not want the people to get overly excited in case of any bad news, I believe. And the Ukrainians also continue to attack Mayos. Russian Defense Ministry reported that the Ukrainian forces have launched another attack on Mayos. And again, I mentioned this is a very strategically important town, as this is a junction for major roads, and this road is very important for resupply up north to Bakhmut from Donetsk city, and Horivka, and then Donetsk city. So this is a very major road. This is a very, very important road that the Russian forces are trying their best to hold. However, the Ukrainian forces may have already some fire control over the road. So because of this salient around this area here, I'm not sure if the Ukrainians still have this salient, this bulge over here, but that's what we have at this moment. Over in the northern flank of the Bakhmut front, we have the Ukrainian forces attacking towards Avdiivka. Again, they are trying again. This information coming from Ryba, the pro-Russian source. So far, the Russian forces reportedly have repelled the attack, and the Ukrainian Defense Ministry reported that the Russians try again at Bohdaniivka. So the Russian forces reportedly are attacking Bohdaniivka again for some reason. I'm not sure. And over further up in the north, over at the highway, previously we have Ukrainians making some progress along the highway. This time round, the Russian forces have counterattacked. Information coming from Ukrainian Defense Ministry and Ryba mentioning a Russian offensive operation over in this area here. So yeah, That's all from the Bakhmut Front. Before we move on, there is a Ukrainian Sukhoi 25 shot down over Novoyehorivka. This is reported by the Russian Defense Ministry. It's shot down by a Russian aircraft. So another air-to-air kill for the Russians, if you believe the Russians. So I think this war has really created multiple aces for the Russian Air Force. I think we haven't have many aces in modern day because there's not a lot of air-to-air warfare. So yeah, so moving on, we go to another major spot, which is actually over at the Svatove Front, where the Russians have their own breakthrough against the Ukrainian lines. So just now it's the Ukrainian lines, the Russian lines getting broken by the Ukrainians. Here is the Russians breaking the Ukrainian lines. And in the latest reports, information coming from Surya Maps as well as Remelin suggests that the Russian forces have made even more progress. So far, based on the mapping, we have the Russian forces seemingly having a flank towards the north. The south remains more or less the same. And however, the Russian forces have kind of entered Novoyehorivka. Remelin reported that the fighting is now actually on the western part of Novoyehorivka, suggesting that the town has been captured by the Russian forces. Ukrainian forces currently is allegedly defending over at KLISHCHIIVKA. So the Russian forces currently pushing, fighting is on the western part. Yeah, but these are not confirmed information. Deep State UA reported that the Russian forces is currently advancing in the direction of Shenef, China. Shenef, China is actually over here. So the general direction of the Russian push is actually towards Shenef, China. I have just posted a further analysis on this front line, looking at all the supply lines and everything on the main channel at Defense Politics Asia. Go and check it out. It will show you the likely objective and the route of attack for the Russians, and also what could the Ukrainians do, or what the Ukrainians would have to do to stop the advances, and what are the implications based on the terrain and the road systems in this area here. And further up north, the Russian forces also seems to have some breakthrough. The fighting towards Nadia, they have already break across the Zaporizhzhia River, and there is rumors of the capture of Novoyehorivka. So information coming from Remelin, the pro-Russian source, saying that the Ukrainian forces have withdrawn from Novoyehorivka, and the Russian forces allegedly have entered the settlement. And so this information coming from Remelin, take it as a rumor first, because we want more confirmation from more trusted sources, put it that way. The fighting towards Nadia is being reported by Surya Maps, where they say that where Surya Maps reported the Russian forces have crossed across the Zaporizhzhia River next to Novoyehorivka. So the Russian forces is making this push and possibly capturing of Novoyehorivka. So away from the Svatove Front, there's nothing over at the Novoyehorivka region. No reports of fighting over there. We go to the northern, to the Kupiansk Front. At the Kupiansk Front, Russian forces continue to be fighting south of Masyutivka. Reports from Deep State UA and Ryba both confirming that the Russians are pushing around the area of Liman Pershi. And we do not have any additional information from the previous SITREP. That's all we know. The Ukrainian forces, as per what we already know, is sending reinforcement to Kupiansk and Sinkivka to try to hold back the Russians. The Russians, however, is not pushing across all these regions. These are not happening. The Russian forces previously have launched an attack across the entire Kupiansk front, and now they are only focusing on Masyutivka. So maybe that is just some kind of a scare tactic against the Ukrainians. And in the end, the main push actually came in the south over at the Svatove region. So further south at the Kreminna Front, we have the Ukrainian forces probing around Nevsky, according to Russian Defense Ministry. Over at the Kreminna region itself, there is some rumors of the Russians making some progress within the Serebransky forestry. Deep State UA reported the fighting within the forestry. Mili Info Live, which is a pro-Russian pro-Russian Telegram channel, reported that the Russians have some successes within the forest and managed to knock out some Ukrainian stronghold within the forest region. Of course, we do not know where exactly are these strongholds or where is the fighting within the forest itself. Yeah, just know that there is continued fighting around the forest. Over at the Torsky region, Ukrainian Defense Ministry reported that the Russians have an offensive operation in the area of Torsk, which is Torsky. And so the Russians are making push again against Torsky. So far, no further information. And that's all from the Kreminna Front. Over at the Siversk Front, we have only some fighting reported at Novoyehorivka, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. So far, that's all we know about this. And moving on to the missile strikes. So let's talk about some missile strikes. The Russian Defense Ministry reported that they have launched missile strike against Odessa again, and this time around is still targeting surface drone production facilities and some other whatever stuff that they are trying to hit. Of course, there are some alleged missile hitting the church in Odessa, which is some big hoo-ha, some very historical church. Ukrainians say it's the Russians hit it. The Russians say it's the surface-to-air missile that hit it. My stand is it looks more like a surface-to-air missile because Zelensky say that it's actually a anti-ship missile that hit it, the KH-22. But the KH-22 have a 1000 kg warhead. If a 1000 kg warhead hit that church, the church would not even have a structure left at all. It will be totally flattened. So I will just leave it at this. You can make your own decision what it is. And there's also another significant information which I usually will not have report because it's just a missile strike on some oil facilities. But this target is at Reni in the Odessa region, and Reni is just off Romania. You can see the border. This is Reni. The Russian forces basically hit Reni, and it's just off Romania. I think this is going to probably give a lot of scare to the Romanian government and the military, because this hit very, very close to Romania itself. And I'm not sure if this is a warning shot against NATO from interfering with the special military operation, because the Ukrainian government is asking NATO to provide naval escort to all these Black Sea routes, the shipping route, to protect the grain shipments and everything. So far, Turkey have already immediately rejected this request, and the rest of the NATO navy is not likely to be able to enter the Black Sea without the Turkish support. And that would only left with Romania, with which the Romanians are unlikely to dare to do anything. So it does feels a bit scary to consider that NATO might get involved. And the Russians are definitely going to hit all these NATO ships if they try to come in and escort all these vessels. So I think as a result, the Russians are consistently hitting the ports, and I believe they might expand the operation to hit more ports. And because they have already hit Odessa, now they hit Reni, they previously also hit Mykolaiv. I think they're going to hit more ports and disable all the ports to make it not even a conversation to be had by the Ukrainian side. So let's hope not have any more escalation. But of course, if you're pro-Ukrainian, of course you will definitely want the NATO to come into the war, and then good luck to all of us. Another interesting information is coming from Deep State UA. They highlighted that in this offensive, especially over at this Svatove Front at the Avdiivka, they say that the Russians go crazy the moment they spot Western equipment like the Leopard tanks and the Bradleys, And the moment they are spotted, immediately the Russians sent a lot of drones against all these vehicles, and especially like Lancet drones and FPV drones, which is civilian drones fitted with a mortar or some kind of explosive, and they have used this pretty successfully, destroying Ukrainian vehicles, armored vehicles at that. And they also noted that the Russians no longer use artillery against Ukrainian advancing forces. They say that the targeted work of artillery on advancing forces was not noticed. The main means of destruction were drones. So this is from the pro-Ukrainian source, which shows a change of Russian tactics against Ukrainian forces or Ukrainian attacks. And this is I think a clear indication of the success and the effectiveness of drones in modern warfare. And it looks like the number of Lancets and the FPVs drones, suicide drones, have increased to the point where the Russians don't even need to use artillery to hit all these equipments, all these armored vehicles. So yeah, it does signal some kind of a change in terms of the battlefield. And the Russians, as far as I understand, have tremendous amount of all these drones. They have mass produced and brought a lot of these drones comparable with the Ukrainians, because the Ukrainians also bought a lot of the drones, but the Russians might be out producing all these drones than Ukraine, because Ukraine have to import. The Russians are building their own on top of importing, and on top of Lancets, which is a super suicide drone of high explosion capability. They can destroy a Leopard tank, the Lancets. And so far, this is looking really bad for the Ukrainians. If the Russians have enough drones to the point where they don't need to use artillery, that's quite scary. Over at the Zaporizhzhia Front, Zaporizhzhia Front, the Ukrainian forces continue their assault against Robotine. And information coming from all sources that you can imagine. Russian Defense Ministry reported about 2 different attacks near Robotine. The Vostok group of forces, part of the Russian military, also reported. They reported 3 different attacks with tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, and they were including with the use of so the Russians are using the TOS-1A, the flamethrower system, against the Ukrainians. So, and then Deep State UA reported that the fighting is very heavy north of Robotine, and fighting for the village is very bloody. And they say that there's a significant number of Russian drones, FPV drones, involved in this fight. So we have arrived in the future, put it that way. It reminds me of the Matrix, where the drones are flying everywhere, or Terminator. I'm not sure which movie that I watched already. And then we have the information from Ryba, the pro-Russian sources, reporting that the Ukrainians continue to attack Robotine, and the Russian forces managed to discover the Ukrainian columns, and then artillery was ordered against them. Ryba also then reported that the front line currently is 1.5 kilometers from the village. 1.5 kilometers is actually quite far. It's actually suggesting, let me just show you. 1.5 kilometers means that the Ukrainian lines is actually along where the Russian mapping is. That the Ukrainians actually currently is holding the forest line instead of anywhere closer over here, nor this road and trenches where the first line of defense is. It looks like the Ukrainians are stuck over here in this forest region north of Robotine. And what makes it even more intriguing is that the Ukrainians actually use remote mining at Robotine area. So this is reported by Warrior DV, which was then retweeted or re-reported by Ryba. And the use of remote mining, suggests that the Ukrainians are now consolidating their positions. Despite that they are still trying to attack, having mining in the area means that they may consider not pushing anymore, but to consolidate their positions for a longer term. So to prevent Russian counterattacks. So this is probably what is currently happening, because they have been trying very hard against Robotine, and the failure to capture Robotine might actually push them to just decide to take stock of whatever they have, and try to defend the position first before they decide what to do next. That might be a situation, but of course take this information with a pinch of salt, because they are not Ryba. They are another pro-Russian source that was simply shared. The information is simply shared by Ryba. Ryba have not confirmed this information just yet. And then we have fighting reported at the Kayamsky sector. There is fighting reported at Kayamsky according to the Deep State UA, the pro-Ukrainian source. They said that the Ukrainian forces were successful. I have no idea where the fighting is. I look at the Deep State UA's mapping. I cannot tell where the fighting is. So it's likely to be around this area here. And then over at Petikaki region, there is fighting reported near Petikaki against Zerebianki, according to Ryba, the pro-Russian source. The Ukrainian forces progressed from Petikaki to attack the Russian lines over at Zerebianki. So far, did not work out. And so that's all from the Kayamsky sector. Moving over to the Velika Novosilka sector. At the Velika Novosilka sector, the Ukrainian forces continue their attack against Uruzhaine and Staromayorsky. Except that the information is a bit funny. Over at Uruzhaine, the Russian Defense Ministry simply reported the fighting in the northeastern part of Uruzhaine, which is where the icon is. It's actually over here. And however, Ryba reported that the assault was about 10%. 10 soldiers attacked Uruzhaine, and somehow they lost 2 armored vehicles. So, yeah, it's just kind of weird. The numbers feels like, yeah, a bit weird. And then over at Staromayorsky, there's fighting continue over for Staromayorsky. The Ukrainians are still continue to try to capture this town, reported by Deep State UA, Ryba, and both pro-Russian and pro-Ukrainian sources confirming that the fighting is still ongoing over for Staromayorsky. Further west, we have fighting around the Prione, Levatne region. Ukrainian Defense Ministry said that the Russians tried to counterattack over in the area of Prione, but was not successful. However, information from Ryba, the pro-Russian source, reported that the Ukrainians actually attacked. A detachment tried to attack from Levatne towards Prione. So, yeah, depend on who you want to believe. Both sides say that the other side is attacking. So that's all from the Velika Novosilka sector. Over at the Donetsk Front, we have fighting reported at Novoyehorivka. Russian Defense Ministry said that the Ukrainians attacked over at Novoyehorivka. The Ukrainians said that the Russians attacked. So no further information. Marinka. At the situation at Marinka, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry said that the Russians are attacking over at Marinka. In the same report, they also say that the Russians are attacking near Krasnohorivka. So this Krasnohorivka, the Russians are attacking. From which direction? Is it here, or here? I have no idea. I have no idea where the Russians attacked from, because it was not reported. Moving into the Avdiivka Front. At the Avdiivka Front, Ukrainian, after I criticized them yesterday, saying that maybe they have given up, they want to show me that they have not. So they started attacking Vasily again, Zverny and Vodian. So fighting is reported at Vasily, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. In the same report, they mentioned about Zverny and Vodian. So it is a continuation of the Ukrainian offensive in Avdiivka. How big is the attack is unknown, or we do not know what is the size of the attack. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry simply continued their reports of Russians attacking in the area of Avdiivka, and they also mentioned Nevelski. The Russian attack at Avdiivka is likely to come from the east, from the Krutabalka region or Kayamka region. We do not know where exactly the fighting is. Maybe it's just some skirmishes and they just report it as a Russian attack. Nevelski, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, say that the Russians are attacking, and this information is corroborated by Deep State UA, the pro-Ukrainian source, saying that there is active hostilities resumed near Nevelske, which is likely to be a Russian attack in the kind of language that they use. So that's all from Avdiivka Front. We do not have much to talk about over here. Nothing at New York Front, and there's nothing over at the Kharkiv Front, and there's nothing along the border of Russia and Ukraine. And that's it. This is the summary for the day of 515 for the 23rd of July. Press the like button, subscribe. Like button you must press. No, must press. You press, YouTube will share this with a few more people, maybe 4 to 10 people. So if you press, there's a high chance that you can get one or two more person to watch. And if you press the subscribe button, then YouTube will then start to share this to more non-subscribed people. So it's very important for you to subscribe. And so I think we are still a bit off to 40,000 subs. So help me get there, and I'll see you in the next update.